a little bit. So you left the banking world and are now on a completely different path to get your PhD in workplace mental health, which is awesome. So did you realize that ego was driving you to stay in banking when you were in banking still, or was it after the fact?
I think I first realized when I was still in banking, but I don't think the proper realization came until afterwards. It was a case where, you know, when I was quite early on in being a manager, and I very much wanted to be the best manager there ever was. And so all of my actions were orientated towards myself. And my team could sense that. And that created a lot of conflict between me and my team. And it was probably epitomized at one point where we had this email that came out from the executive manager every month, which was team leader of the month. And I told everyone and sundry, I want to be the team leader of the month. Like, that's what my goal is. You know, my goal wasn't to be a good team leader and look after my people. It was, I want to be the best.
Okay.
And I made this known to everyone. And I'm kind of glad I did do that. But all of these more mature leaders sat back, probably chuckling to themselves.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Just, you know, that day never come. You know, every month it was somebody else. And it started to frustrate me. And then I was able to sit down and have a chat to my leader at the time, who is now one of my really, really good friends. And he was quite frank just to say, we just think you're very selfish. You only think about yourself. You really don't care about your team. And that's probably why you're not progressing. So that was a really good wake-up call for me. But I do have to say that there were many other times where ego popped up. And it wasn't until later on that I actually got better at being able to go, hold on, that's a bit of an egotistical or, you know, egoistic thought.
Yeah, sure. You start recognizing it. Well, it's just like anything else, I guess. It comes with practice.
Yeah.
You start recognizing it. But it's interesting that, because I think you would agree that just being in the banking world, you were kind of settling, because you're settling for, you know, safe option, an option where you knew you could be successful, etc. And there's money and all this stuff. So you're already settling that way. But then by trying to be the best at whatever you're doing, you were also kind of settling, maybe without even knowing it, but you were almost settling for being subpar. Because, you know, your ego was getting in the way of exactly what you were trying to accomplish. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was it, really. I think what the problem with ego can be is it can get in the way. I think it can cloud your vision of what really matters. You know, it takes over. So that's why you need to accept it. And I think that's a really important part of Amanda's post, is it's learning to accept it and not identify it as an enemy, because it is an important part of us that will always be there, but just to kind of look at it and sometimes critically think about it and say, all right, well, appreciate you that you're there, but, you know, I think you're probably clouding my vision of what really matters right now. So I think that was definitely a big cloud that obstructed my view of what really mattered.
Right. And just to kind of piggyback on that thought a little bit, and I kind of alluded to the fact that that is part of ego's job, is to protect you. And just to go into that a little bit more too, so ego will look at your ego, and I'm talking about it like it's a third person, but that's just the easiest way to think of it. So that's just the easiest way to think of it, but it kind of is in a way, because it's not really you. It's this other voice in your head. And you know, get kind of metaphysical here, but if you can hear this voice in your head, it's not you. It's something else. Exactly. So it is kind of its own thing. So anyway, so ego will then look at ego, like I said, is trying to protect you. So what it does, and just case in point with you, is what it does is it looks at what's going on around you and how are other people being successful, how are other people staying safe. And, you know, in our societies, we think in order to be safe, we have to have money, we have to have, obviously you have to have a house, but you know, we often tend to think too that we have to have more house than we need to have, and all these other possessions. We think we need all these material things to be safe. And so of course, in order to get those material things, you need to be successful in your work. And so then in order to be successful in your work, you think that you have to create this identity that is maybe like the super identity, like the super bank manager, you know, and you're just trying to create this identity of being the best, or what do you say it was, something of the month.
Oh, yeah. So it was like manager of the month or
Yeah,
something
so
like
you're
that.
like trying to be manager of the month so that you can create a safety net for yourself so that your ego says, oh, we're safe, we're going to survive. You know, so
Yeah.
that's kind of just to kind of pull it all together for whoever is listening or watching, that's exactly how the ego works. And that's exactly, and like you said, it's not a bad thing. Your ego is very wise because your ego is taking in everything that's ever happened to you. It's taking in everything that's it's ever witnessed happen to anybody else. And so it's
Mm.
taking all that information and it's telling you how you should react, how you should feel, what you should do in any given situation to keep yourself safe. That's really what it's doing in a nutshell. So,
It is.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I really like most about Eckhart Tolle's A New
Mm-hmm.
Earth was what he talked about in relation to the ego, which is you can understand or identify the ego because it's always waiting for a future event to occur.
Oh, good
So,
point.
you say, oh, I'm going to be happy in this moment because it's a nice sunny day. And then
Right.
you go, say, yeah, look, that's great, but we probably need it to be sunnier or we need, these other
Right.
things to pop up. Then you're allowed to be happy. You're just not allowed to be happy yet because we still need to get to this future state, you
Yeah.
know? So, and that's something I've found is that you are always striving, so, to the example of the manager of the month. You're always striving for something. You're
Mm-hmm.
not able to sit there in that moment and say, "Well, I'm quite happy right now," and that's
Right.
okay. I don't need any more, I suppose.
Well, and even if you were in the moment and focusing on what was really truly important in that moment, you would probably get manager of the month.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
because
a
you
funny
know
kind of process, isn't
you
it?
don't have, it's so often that the things we're actually focused on we don't get because we're
Yes,
so focused on this huge accomplishment that we miss all the little things that you had to do along the way to get there. And
yes,
so yeah, that's just such an interesting example. It's like a perfect example of how ego can just get in the way, and yeah, and like you say, cause you to settle in your life and in your career.